Hello, good evening. My name is Malik Abbas Dabo. Welcome to PM Express. For 15 years, many countries across the world pursued the Millennium Development Goals established by the United Nations. After 15 years, the United Nations has established 17 other development goals. Those are the Sustainable Development Goals. Did Ghana achieve all of the MDGs? And why is it necessary that we pursue SDGs now? Tonight on PM Express, we are going to dissect these issues, and I have a team of personnel who are most qualified to discuss this topic. Join me with my guests. Let's discuss these. Stay tuned. Back. With me to discuss this important topic, the Sustainable Development Goals, is Mr. Kojo Sedega. I hope I got the name right. Kojo Sedega. He's an economic specialist with the UNDP. Kojo, welcome.
Thank you very much.
We are also honored to have Ms. Gladys Garte. She's head of UN Systems Unit, Ministry of Finance. Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with you, Madam Garte. And I've seen a nice book on Ghana's performance in the MDGs. How did Ghana do with the MDGs, the key ones?
Thank you very much, Malik. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Good. The Millennium Development Goals we have implemented over the past 15 years, as you rightly said. I would simply say that the results are missed. Missed because we did very well in most of the goals, because we are not measuring the goals by themselves, but we have indicators based on which we measure the goals. And for each goal, we have 3, 4, some 5 indicators. So if you get 2 out of the 5 indicators for one goal, no matter how well you do, you cannot say that you have achieved everything. But basically, the report is here, as you rightly said. I must say that the goal 1, which basically looked at orphan poverty, Ghana did very well. Yeah. Ghana did very well, and we achieved this, I must say, happily, that we achieved it well ahead of time.
And we have been trumpeting it.
Yes, very well.
Rightly so.
That is why last week the whole world, the economic forum and everything, and the whole world descended on Ghana to come and help us to celebrate this day. If the President of the World Bank, the President of African Development Bank, the UN and EU officials were all here to come and mark end of poverty day in
Dr.
Jim Kim. Yes.
Yeah.
It is because Ghana did very well as compared to other emerging economies on the goal 1. Ghana also did very well, and my colleague is here, he will support me. We did very well in the goal 2, which was looking at basic education for children. We also achieved that well ahead of time. The ones that we didn't do too well, the usual suspects, sanitation.
Okay, so let me put that to him to talk us through the sanitation and how come we didn't do too well in sanitation.
Okay, thank you very much, Malik. Sanitation, there would be a lot of reasons why we've not done well in sanitation. And here we're looking at sanitation in form of liquid waste and solid waste. And in the form of solid waste, we will say it's both states and individuals. States, because the assemblies need to have some sites for us to be able to be dumping our waste and be processed, but that is not actually up to the standard that we want.
But the point about dumping sites, is that a sustainable, and we will be talking about sustainable development goals, yes. Dumping sites, is that a sustainable way of disposing waste?
It's not. I think that's what I said, to process the waste. So because every waste, when you dump, there should be a processing plant at the other waste place to be processing that into other products. And that we do not necessarily have a hold on it yet in the country.
Why is that?
It's a lot of money, 1, 2. It might be an issue of interest for private sector as well. More often, I can compare that with the maternal health. When we did MAF, what is called MDG Acceleration Framework for maternal health, and sanitation. Those are the two lagging behind. So when we did, we had support for maternal health, but we didn't have any support for sanitation. So that should tell you whether it is maybe interest or not. I would not be able to pinpoint.
It means at the national level, we haven't prioritized sanitation.
I wouldn't say so. At times you can prioritize sanitation, but you can be overwhelmed as well. So that's what I was just talking about, the government side. Probably if we get to our own individual side, we will look at it as well, where we do not respect rules. And in some cases, we are even not disciplined enough to observe basic sanitation rules in the country. For example, you will be beginning to think, why would I build a house in a city that I do not have even a toilet facility in that house?
Is that not because you know that nobody will hold you responsible if you build a house and don't put a toilet facility there?
Should you just think that way, that nobody will hold me responsible?
Well,
so therefore,
but human beings all over the world tend to like to violate the laws and hold the law in abeyance. So once we don't enforce the laws, we should reasonably
I agree with you, but let's look at it. How many people do we have that can enforce these laws? And where people throw rubbish everywhere. By the time you move from one end of a street to the other end, how many police or sanitation officers can we have there? I think it behoves on us as human beings as well to maintain a clean environment. And I think most religions teach about cleanliness. And I can think about it why we do that, because as a Christian, a Muslim, or a Hindu, and even traditionally, all of these religions tell us that we should keep clean environment, but we rather pollute the environment. When we see gutters are opened, we think that it is open to dump into it, where you see somebody carrying rubbish and dump into a gutter. And for me, that is, you are overwhelming the system.
But Madam Kati, we are not going to have a situation where people will start acting responsibly and reasonably and keeping their waste like you would find in Europe and elsewhere. They keep their waste until they get home and dispose it off. They get a bin and put it in. We are not going to get that.
We should be able to get there. We should be able to get there because it will only take for education. Education and education and education. We are living in a society where even when as individuals you try to correct each other, you are rather frowned upon. If you are in your car, and it has happened to me before, when I'm in my car and then I see a nice car pass by me, somebody in it to throw something, and then I slow quietly and said, oh, that was not fair. You know how the person will scream at you? Is that your bedroom? Is that where you sleep? You see, and when you keep doing that, what you are saying is that you don't care about the environment. It is somebody else's responsibility.
And these mostly are the educated people. I'm not saying that the educated
both
people
the educated and the uneducated.
A lot of the people you see dropping the things, whom you drive to and say this, a lot of them are educated.
Some are uneducated, some are uneducated. But the general consensus, the general belief is that we are very careless human beings. People think that Ghanaians are very nice people. But when it comes to the environment and the public goods, we don't take good care of them. And again, I will support what Kujo said. When you do that, you only overburden the system, the already financially challenged system. So it means at the end of the day, a lot of money, the small envelope that we have, greater part of it will have to be used to clean up. I've been an assembly lady before where luckily I chaired the finance and administration subcommittee. And there is no single quarter that we did not exceed the funds that we set aside for sanitation. Because we are always overwhelmed by the filth. And if you did not clean them, people were going to get sick. So you take monies from the roads, you take monies from the envelopes for other things, and then you keep cleaning up.
And the situation doesn't change. Apart from the sanitation bit, could you, what other MDG didn't we do too well in? Quickly, so we can
the maternal.
Yeah. The other one we didn't do well is the maternal health, where we are to reduce maternal death by 3/4. That's 75%. We were only able to achieve 50% of that. So we made a slow progress in that area. And it's of concern because mothers generally have a lot of good things for society. So when they are dying, it must be of concern. one, mother's health depends on child health as well. So if you have a good mother, a mother who has a good health, therefore will influence the health of the child. If you have a mother who understands how to care for a home, it impacts on the well-being of that home, including the men in that house. So that's why a death of a mother is a concern to us. That's why even though we did 50, we don't want to say we did the best. That's why we say we didn't try at all in that area, even though the progress is slow. That is one major thing. And when the factors that accounted for that, when we were doing the MDG acceleration framework for maternal health, we found out that there are some factors like hemorrhage, killing our mothers, and all these are other factors like.
And when you say hemorrhage? Hemorrhage
is bleeding. Like if a mother is in labor and he started bleeding, normally, as the medical doctor say, it will not take long for that woman to pass on. And then, therefore, the question is how quickly can you get to the nearest health center for care? But it's a challenge for us. And in some cases, the health centers are far away. In some cases, they are close, but they are not easily accessible. Those that are close are not easily accessible are in the cities, where you have a health center close to you. But because of the traffic on the road, you can't easily get there. Those that are far away, the roads are bad and they are far away. And even the means of transport are nothing to write home about. At times, some are donkeys pulling a cart, you are in it, and some are rickety taxis or cars that you carry them. So those are some of the contributing factors. In some cases, the family planning processes also affect the health of a mother, where a mother just gives birth very, let me use the word loosely, intermittently, very closely, and just giving birth to.
The spacing of the children
is not properly done. Maybe within 2 years you are having two, and the third one is already on the way coming. And it impacts the health of the mother. And also health attendants. In some homes, they don't really attend hospitals for maternal care. And in some areas, you need to ask permission from your husband or your husband's sisters. So all those things impact health delivery for us. So I think largely we need to work on our education system to educate mothers and even the fathers that it is important that the lady, as soon as she's pregnant, is able to attend the hospital. I think the minimum requirement is 4 times at least for the night before you deliver. And when during delivery, you must ensure that you go to a facility where a trained person will deliver that baby, attend to you.
But if you were to rate our performance in terms of the, how much of the MDGs we have achieved, where will you place it on 1 to 10?
No, on 1 to 10, I think we've done about 7.
We've done about 7. And that's quite impressive.
It's quite impressive, as I was saying. The report is here. We've done about 7 because for most of them, apart from the sanitation and the maternal health, they go 5 and they go 7. For the remaining 6, we did quite substantially. Unfortunately, we didn't do too well also on the goal 8 because even though Ghana is up there in the global discussions on development effectiveness, within the period, we did not pass and approve our aid policy.
And so goal 8?
Goal 8, that's global partnership. But you should, as a sovereign state, you need a policy to direct the development partners who come here so that they will do things according to your priority areas. Unfortunately, we had a draft that we were implementing aspect of it, but that document never.
We didn't finalize.
We didn't finalize. We didn't approve it, so it went against us substantially. But to add a little bit to the goal 5, the maternal mortality and the issue, I think going forward we will need to do a lot of education so far as our cultural practices are concerned. Could you
think that plays a big part?
Yes, it did. It did. It did. And if you went round, especially the hinterlands, could you mention where a woman can only go to the hospital when she has obtained permission from the husband, or if the husband is not there, the firstborn son in the house. And even when after the mouth the MDG's acceleration framework, where we put in place facilities to take mobile clinics to the villages. When you go and the husband had gone to the farm and is not there to give permission, the woman cannot come out.
Some resistance.
Some resistance. No, culturally she has come to accept that it is the norm, it is a good thing for her. She doesn't see anything wrong with it. If she sees something wrong with it, she is going to vote and maybe say, it is my health, so I'll come out. But she's been indoctrinated to believe that it is the best thing that is happening to her.
And these are places where they don't have mobile phone network, so she can't call the husband to seek permission before. Okay, let me go to Kojo, and you work at the UNDP. Yeah. Why was it necessary for the UN to say, okay, 15 years, we have pursued MDGs, we've done well in some areas, we haven't done too well in some areas. It is now time to pursue what the UN calls Sustainable Development Goals. Why was that necessary?
Thank you very much. I think it's very necessary for some very key reasons, which I will enumerate. One, I will say that life is a journey where you are on a path going, and you say you've not reached destination, but you are exhausted. It doesn't mean that you should not continue the journey. You have to. So therefore, we have a plan or global agenda for past 15 years, which we said we have to implement. And we implemented it to a point, and the year elapsed. Now it is for us to look ahead and see what else do we do. We can't just stop that, well, some countries were not able to achieve this, and therefore let's stop and go back.
Why did we extend it by 5 more years and say, okay, we said 15 years, we were going to achieve certain things. Okay. We haven't achieved that. So let's extend 5 more years, and then we'll achieve.
That brings me to the second reason. The second reason why it is also necessary is that this particular goal dovetails into the current Sustainable Development Goals. When you pick the Sustainable Development Goals, we say that there are 17, and the MDGs, we say there are 8. And when we were talking, we said the MDGs are ambitious. That's what they were saying. But I can tell you, as the UN boss described it, that the Sustainable Development Goals are very transformative. They are transformative in the sense that this MDGs dovetail into the SDGs. And you will find out that within the SDGs, some targets within the MDGs are now goals, meaning they have been given more. They have given more importance to them.
We set up 8 goals. Yes. To achieve 8 goals within 15 years. We couldn't achieve all of them. Mm-hmm. Some countries did well, others didn't. Yes. Even within some countries, they did well in some of the goals, they didn't do well in some of the goals. Okay. And now we are setting 17 within the same, another 15 years. Mm-hmm. How realistic is that? But you hold that answer. I want us to take a break. When we come back, we will go into what these 17 goals are and whether they are realistic, whether we can achieve them within the time frame given by the UN. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. We are discussing the Sustainable Development Goals and finding out how sustainable are they? How realistic is it that we can achieve these goals, 17 of them, in 15 years? Where is the money going to come from to fund them? With me are Kojo Sedega. He is an economist specialist at the UNDP. We are also honored. We have Gladys Gatti, head of UN systems at the Ministry of Finance. Before we went on the break, you were making the point about dovetailing from the MDGs into the SDGs. Just finish that point so that she can lead us into what the SDGs are. There are 17 of them. We'll pick just the key ones.
So as I was saying, that this the MDGs dovetail into the SDGs. You will find out that some of the targets here are goals within the SDGs now. And so it means that more prominence has been given to them and that we need to work on them better. And also, you will also find that we have unfinished businesses with the Millennium Development Goals. So those unfinished businesses are also within the...
So we are carrying them forward into SDGs.
And in a more sustainable way and a more planned way. And you see, the problem or the challenge we have with the MDGs is that it is top-down approach to the development process.
That's mouthful. Top-down means?
Top-down means it's like head of states meet in New York, and they decided that, okay, we can do these 8 goals. But now we thought that as we are getting to the end of the day, we need to do a review. So having done the review, we realized that there are certain challenges we faced on the way because we did not do certain things right. So therefore, we thought that we should do things right and be able to achieve them. And that's why we went around since 2012, went around globally in every country. They went around to ask people, what future do you want? And so people globally said they want this, they want that, education, they want health, they want employment. So all these are put together.
So these
and
17
negotiated.
Were, these 17 were distilled from views collated
exactly.
from opinions of people across the world.
Exactly. So as we did this, they were negotiated. Some regions, you know, we have Africa region and other regions think that some are more important to them and some are not. So all the things that people want were brought onto the table and they were negotiated through a process of meetings. Okay. That's how we got
what are these goals, Gladys? There are 17 of them. What are the key ones?
Good. Just to add a little bit to what Kojo said before I go on to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you have set yourself an aim, you are working at it, and you do well halfway and you have not finished, moving on, it doesn't mean that you should discard it completely. So it is in that thinking that it was agreed at the UN headquarters that moving on, the things that people have done and done them well, we are going to bring them again for others who did not do them well, to learn, lessons learned, to do them. And then the ones that had unfinished agendas, let's bring them back and come and finish them because they are still very important. So you will see that currently we have 17 goals. I must state first that in the MDGs, we didn't have much under climate change. It came a little bit under environmental. But in this current Sustainable Development Goals, we have 3 goals. The goal 13, the goal 14, and the goal 15. All of them under climate change.
It's probably because at the time we were setting the MDGs,
climate change was not an issue.
Okay.
It was not an issue. So we could handle it as a subset of a goal. Now it has come up that having done 15 years, we have learned our lessons that, look, we cannot continue with business as usual. We need to take this climate change and environmental issues seriously than we have. So what are the goals? The first goal is to end poverty. And I must say that we have a popular slogan when it comes to the SDGs. Leaving nobody behind. What that means is that in the next 15 years, by the year 2013, in the year 2030, nobody living on this planet should be classified as poor. That means that we should be able to provide your basic meals. Each child born should have gone through a minimum of 12 years of education. You should have decent accommodation. You should have portable water. You should be able to clothe yourself properly. And then HIV and all the other menacing diseases would have been brought under control.
Kojo, is this a realistic goal? Because if you just go to the Central Business District in Accra and look at the squalor and misery in which people live, is it realistic to
15 years from now,
to hope that 15 years from now all of these people can have a decent place to live, a child that is born there can have a minimum of 12 years education, and is this achievable? Is this sustainable?
For me, I would say yes, it's sustainable and it's achievable. More often, when you put your mind to a particular goal, you will definitely have to achieve it.
It appears too ambitious.
And I tell you that it is transformative. The reason being that more often we get overwhelmed with our challenges. I say, well, even what do I do? If I go there, there are people lying down, there are nothing to do about them and those sort of things. But you will realize one thing, that the vim in every human being and the enthusiasm in every human being happens when there is a calamity. Then you realize that human beings can do more than they are actually doing. When there is a flood right now, you see a reaction of somebody or people, how they can take care of that situation. When there is an earthquake or a tornado, you see how people react. And you begin to wonder that, oh, people could have done this, but they were not doing it. So why don't that adrenaline in us, why don't we bring them out and work for it? It takes very little things to do big things, but we always want the big things to do little things. But I think that's the biggest challenge we have.
Do you share his optimism?
Of course, yes.
And is that optimism grounded in
Facts.
not just fact, but is it grounded in a sustainable way of looking at this?
They are very grounded because looking at where we have come from with the MDGs, where the exposure was very little, education was very little, the commitment and the zeal were all not as high as we have now, and where we have come from. And that is why we are calling the MDGs, we call them Millennium Development Goals. They were let's call them the platform where we are going to jump up. So given the way we have done there and with the lessons learned, I think we have built our capacity enough to move on. And that is why we are calling these current goals sustainable. The good thing is that they are not new things. If you pick the goals and you study them and you take even Ghana, our own shared growth agenda, you realize that almost everything that is here is captured there. So they are not new things. Don't let us think that they are new things that somebody sitting somewhere has come to impose on us. But as Kojo said, we have gone round, we have discussed these are the things that people want. And the good thing is that there is commitment. Because you, as a head of state, as government, the last thing you want to see is any member of your country living in poverty.
Those are good intentions, and we know them. We know that all world leaders have good intentions. Sometimes the reality is that intentions cannot solve the problem.
So let's tax them to do the right thing.
Practical steps that need to solve the problems. And when you look at the kinds of rural communities that many people in Ghana, for example, in other parts of Africa and other parts of the world live, it seems to me is overly ambitious to hope or...
What would you have? Yes,
Malik, you know something, you can see that it's overly ambitious. This whole thing here, I can break it into 4 parts. And as Gladys said, you will realize that there are things that we're doing in everyday life. The first set, you can think of them as socioeconomic, which talks about hunger, agriculture, industrialization, and those are socioeconomic things that we are doing on a daily basis as a country. Another one that you can look at and talk about is environment. The environmental issues, energy, climate change, to conserve the forests we have, protect and promote sustainable terrestrial ecosystems. That is environment. And the 16 goals, 16, that is another set, talks about governance and peace, which we are always pursuing in various ways, including the court systems, including our electoral system, including our peace architecture and all that we have. We are doing. And the 4th one is all about implementation. Where do we have the money to implement what we have?
And that's going to play a big part in this discussion.
And also data and M&E to monitor all this. That's all. If you take a good look at that.
The second goal is hunger. We hope to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture within 15 years. If we look at our agricultural performances, and consistently we realize that growth in the agricultural sector is actually slowing. At some point, it's actually negative. We were doing fertilizer subsidy that has stopped. So are we going to bring back these things in order that we can achieve this end hunger in 15 years?
The hunger that we are going to end, as you have rightly said, is going to depend on sustainable agriculture. Our agriculture has lived for a very long time, but you agree with me that we haven't done much sustainable agriculture in this country. How much of our farming lands are under irrigation? For greater part of the farmers, they are still relying on rains to get their produce out.
And we have said this when I was a kid.
And when I was coming to that, why are you taking the winter to business? Ever since O-level, there is no economic class or I did geography or a geography class that I took that would not have a question of how do we move out of sustainable peasant farming to commercial farming. So, Malik, the point I want to stress is that if I am saying these goals are attainable, it is because we have the solutions. Just that we have not been able to hold the bull by the horn. So if all of us are going to put our asses together and we are going to be optimistic and do away with a little bit of our pessimism, I'm sure at the end of the day, you will contribute, I will contribute, the people who are at the helm of affairs will contribute. We are going to hold them responsible, accountable, because we ourselves are going to behave responsibly.
For a moment, that sounded like President Mahama talking.
No.
Talking about cynicism and pessimism. But we have to take a break. When we come back, we will continue with this discussion. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are talking sustainable development goals. How sustainable are they? Is it realistic that we can achieve them within 15 years? And you were making the point about it's possible. We should stop being pessimistic. We should be optimistic. I want to find out, and I asked the question, is this optimism grounded? You can have blind optimism. And is this optimism grounded? Because given what has happened to our agriculture, it is difficult to expect anybody reasonably to be optimistic.
I think with the issue of the agriculture, we are on the right track because there are a lot of things that we are putting in place. I think in the past, we had left agriculture to the government. The good thing is that now we have the private sector coming into the country to do a lot of agriculture. From where I sit in Ministry of Finance, we are having a lot of PPP arrangements. We are having issues coming out of the Ghana Commercial Agriculture Project, where we are going to see arable land being put under huge plantations, rice, cassava, plantain, all other things. Until we go commercial agriculture, our agriculture cannot be sustainable. So in this case, I'm equating sustainable agriculture to commercial agriculture done within sustainable means, making sure that all the issues, environmental issues, are properly taken care of.
Could you forgive my pessimism on this?
Okay.
I come from the Sada region.
Yeah.
I know that the intentions of government when Sada was being formulated were noble.
Yeah.
And emphasis was on agriculture. I do know that tractors were bought, but Sada has virtually failed because the tractors that were bought, the manner in which they were distributed. Look, seeds were bought at a time it was out of season, and yet the state paid for those ones. This is our history, and this is just a few years back. I cannot be convinced, and I do know that the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana cannot be convinced that we are taking the right steps and that our agriculture is going to be what it's supposed to be, and that we can be the food and bread basket of Africa, as the politicians like to say, and that we can end hunger anytime soon.
Okay. Thanks. For me, bringing SADA into this discussion, I think is appropriate. And I will say that I don't know why SADA bought tractors, but I was expecting maybe SADA would have guaranteed the purchase of tractors, just as a government institution guaranteeing for a private sector to participate in that distance. So I will say I want to see SADA going forward as a coordinating agency, a development coordinating agency within the North, and also mapping up areas, and currently they are mapping up areas which the UNDP and other UN agencies are supporting. They map out areas to know which areas are what, the soil topology. They want to know the soil type, which minerals as well. They are working with SDGs, the geographic systems, and adjoining to geography department. So I would want to see that SADA does not engage in commercial activity, but rather engage in coordinating development in the North. I always hold a view that because the North development process was not properly coordinated, that's why we still have what we have in the North. We have almost all the NGOs in the country are in the North. They are there. Almost every DP's money is in the North.
And yet poverty is highest.
Government's money is in the North every time they direct it.
And the land is there.
Is there. So I think that it is the coordination of the development. If you do not coordinate development properly, you will not achieve anything. I have an instance where we went to the North after we did some district human development reports, and we want to train the district officers to be able to be collecting data, to be updating their data stock as we did, and took them through the training. And I realized that they were trained before by another agency, so we didn't do the training. But in more cases, what you find is that one particular person would have had the same training about 4 or 5 times, depending on who is coming, and probably it's under different name. So we need to look at our development. And as she was saying, the development cooperation policy, it's very, very important for this country. And that can guide us in doing a lot of things and doing them properly. Where I will not go into producing this paper, and later I find out that another agency is producing another size of that same paper.
Effort.
Exactly. So those things happen if people do not know what is happening where, or there is no policy guiding development process in the country. So that's what I want to see SADA doing.
You think it's a problem of coordination? I think it's a problem of money. You come from the Ministry of Finance. We are talking sustainable development goals. As I pointed out earlier, I do know that in the last 2 years, government couldn't do the fertilizer subsidy because the Ministry of Finance didn't have the money. Where are we going to get the money to implement these sustainable development goals and to achieve them?
Thank you very much, Malik. The reason why the 17 goals that we are going to do in the next 15 years are sustainable is because for the first time, we are having a financing agreement which has just been accepted, a document which has just been accepted and passed. It has been christened the Quadruple A Addis Ababa Agenda for Action. And it is as a result of close to 1.5 years of discussions on financing for development. I'm sure you've heard FFDs, financing for development. After our discussions, the document that our heads of state met and approved has been christened the Quadruple A, Addis Ababa Agenda for Action. And it is an integral part of the Sustainable Development Goal because it comes under the Goal 17 as a means of implementation. The MDGs at the onset did not have any means of implementation. In fact, it was 2 years down the implementation of the MDGs that people started asking questions. Hey, let's wake up. Where are we going to get all the funds? And then quickly the UN led a process, and we had the first FFD conference in Monterrey, Mexico. So we came out with that Monterrey consensus. It was at that point that I'm giving you a little bit of background to see that a lot of work has been done here. In the Monterrey consensus, that was when we have our developed world, the North, coming out for the first time to promise that going forward and for the MDGs, they were going to contribute 0.7% of their gross national income to help implementation of the goals. Unfortunately, that did not realize. Just a few of them. I'm not here to do advert for any country, so I won't mention names. But just about a few of them made good on their promise.
That's not new, is it?
That is not new. But moving forward, we even had the FFD2 in Doha in 2008. And then that also came up with the Doha Declaration, basically saying that, good, now we are going to give the money, but it is going to go to areas that are needed most. Malik, the point is that with all these discussions, the issue of domestic resource mobilization was just wallowing in it. When we started discussing the Sustainable Development Goals, the first thing that the UN made it clear is that it is clear that our development partners are not in the position to fund us as we expect. Because that entitlement mentality will have to be done away with immediately.
You hold that, and she raises a very important point, because we have heard time and again, 70% of revenues that we mobilize are used in paying salaries and wages. And you look at the population, about 600,000 public sector workers. If 600,000 public sector workers, and if these numbers are reliable, 70% of our total revenues mobilized locally are spent on 600,000 of the total population. Including myself. So where do the rest go? So you have 30% for investment and for capital expenditure.
It's fully inadequate.
This being the problem, and if the partners insist that, look, raise more yourself before we will give you counterpart funding so that you can undertake the projects that will lead to the achievement of or the attainment of these goals, we are in a deep, deep trouble, aren't we?
But yes, we are in deep trouble. It's mind-boggling to have that size of a payroll on our internally generated revenue. But I should think that that is why they are doing more of these payroll cleaning, to ensure that the people who are being paid are the right people who are to be paid. And I know at that 70% of revenue, it has dropped now almost all the way up to 50 thereabout of revenue, our internal revenue generation.
That's the percentage of internal revenue generated spent on public sector.
So it has dropped very much, and they are still doing more. I think you heard the Fair Wages Commission that they are taking more people out of the payroll because of some anomalies, and that's right. So that's how we should be doing it and cleaning it till we have that. But by and large, we also need to bear in mind that our tax revenue that we generate is still low as compared to most countries around us. We still believe that there is more room to collect revenue in this country. I find out that more of the people who pay the tax and easily accessible are the ones that the state tax more. So meanwhile, we need to expand to the periphery.
And we have heard that again. It's another refrain.
And get more people into the
informal sector.
The informal sector.
In. When we come back, I want us to take a break. When we come back, I'll talk to Gladys. She's from the Ministry of Finance. She will talk us through what is being done by the ministry and by government so that we can raise more revenue and then earn more from those who are helping us to achieve these development goals. You are watching PM Express discussing sustainable development goals. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. We are discussing sustainable development goals. Can we achieve them? Can we raise the money to achieve these goals? Gladys, you were talking to us about the financing arrangements that have been put in place. I pointed out that, well, international organizations have pledged money before and the money hasn't come. This time, you think that the money will come and we will achieve the goals.
Thank you very much. The good thing is that this time we are not going to depend on any promised money.
But we don't have the money on our own.
You should have, and that's why I'm going to take you through the 7.
That means you're going to take more taxes and we'll go on demonstration.
If the people who are earning incomes in this country will all be true to themselves and us and pay their taxes, and we will also be very lenient in giving out tax holidays and administration, and then just do well with our tax administration, we will do well. Let me quickly take you through the 7 blocks of the financing parameters. And I've told you this is an integral part of the sustainable development goals. If you take the financing implementing arrangements, then you are going to have challenges meeting your goals. The first one has to do with domestic resource mobilization. In domestic resource mobilization, we are talking about both gathering the funds and the usage of it. The second one has to do with the international public finance, the popular ODA. Let me emphasize here that since last year, at the discussions global level, the point that has been on the table is that we should not expect much of that, especially in the case of Ghana, when we are middle income. When you are middle income, grants, concessionary loans are all a thing.
That means we will keep borrowing.
You have to borrow sometimes if there's a gap and if you can pay. If there's so we come to debt and debt sustainability. It is also a block here. Then you come to private financing. I think moving forward, what we are saying is that we should put in place mechanism and the legal regulatory framework to try to attract the private sector, both international and domestic, for them to put some of their resources in some of these goals, so that it will not be the government alone shouldering this. We're also talking about international trade, making sure that we are adding value to the raw materials that we
Which
produce.
doesn't happen. We always say.
So what we are saying is that it should happen. That is the difference between you and
But
I.
the reality is that it doesn't happen.
But the reality is that it can happen
Because
if we are true to
You have
ourselves.
been optimistic, and I am suggesting your optimism is a blind one because it doesn't happen. We have produced cocoa. We just produced golden trees in producing some chocolate.
If it has not happened in the past, and we are saying that going forward, you see, Malik, if you are always getting things from outside, for lack of a better word, let me say that you don't think properly. But when you start going hungry, as we were discussing behind the scenes, necessity is the mother of all inventions we have been saying.
Kojo, because we are not getting from
If the
outside,
ODA is not coming, you will have no choice but to make sure that you put your house in order to mobilize domestic resources properly.
that is why
Stop
we are
all the
borrowing.
illicit financial
That is
flows.
why we are borrowing. The IMF says we are a debt distressed country.
Oh, did they say that?
Yes. The IMF says we are a debt distressed country.
Okay, we are debt
That's public
distress.
knowledge.
I have not read that yet. But one thing is that borrowing comes in different forms. If you borrow and put into an productive area, it is not a proper borrowing. And that borrowing is not sustainable. But if you borrow and put into social services, education and health, it's a sustainable
And that's
borrowing.
what we are doing.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's a sustainable borrowing because the social services is not necessarily that you go and take everything by free, but you are providing services for people. That is why even government hospitals now have internally generated revenue.
Okay.
That is why even water, if you put into water and those sort of things, we will, it keeps us healthy to have a good drinking water.
We don't have too much time. I want Gladys to give us some of the remaining blocks for the financing.
I spoke about international trade. The next one has to do with capacity building and innovation, which is thriving on technology. So it means that moving forward, we cannot continue doing business as usual. We have to improve our technology substantially, and that will also reduce the cost of doing business, saving government some money to put in this. And then we talk about our very good friend, the systemic issues. Making sure that in all these 7 blocks, we have to make sure that there are institutions that are preventing the funds from not being used for the purposes for which they are intended. And we are not talking about only CSOs being watchdogs, waiting until they have seen monies dissipated before.
There should be greater transparency
Transparency,
and
institute accounts, so that we will even be able to stop certain things before they happen. So when you look at the systemic issues component, it's talking about making sure that everything is transparent, accountability from the ground to the top. It's known. Everybody knows what we are about. When it's talking about project implementation, it's very clear. We know we start day 1, end day 2. From the chief, district assembly, common person, the school teacher in the community, we all know about it. Then we keep track of it.
In 15 seconds, so you think these 17 goals are achievable and we can achieve them within 15
I'm telling you that we should be able to do it, and in any case, we are already doing them. We are just emphasizing on them.
And the good thing also is that when these goals were being done, we did what we call localization of the SDGs. And also we went back to all the people again and asked them, how do you think all these things you have said, how can they be implemented? And one thing, critical thing is this transparency issue.
So the ordinary people have played a part in this.
In fact, let me end this by saying that they have even indicated which indicators we should be measured on.
On that note, we will bring today's PM Express to a close. It's been one great enlightening discussion. My name is Malik Abbas Dabu. This has been PM Express. Stay tuned.